Hello, I am California and Texas attorney Michael Eline. I'll teach you how to become a lawyer without law school. Hello. I am attorney Michael Eline. As you know, I am an attorney licensed in Texas and California. So everything that I talk about is sort of limited to general principles when it's an area like New York. But this was really interesting because this involves federal issues that I could potentially talk about without getting into a whole lot of trouble, but just accept that disclaimer. Everything that I do here is separate and apart from my work at Eline Law Firm. I'm just trying to give people information that the mainstream media, for-profit media, will never discuss or talk about. The way you know they censor us most is by what they won't share with us. And so I like to fill in the blanks from a legal perspective. I like to teach people how to become a lawyer without law school. So one of the things that I want to talk to you about now is this Trump fraud case. It's really interesting because it's called fraud, but it doesn't meet the traditional definitions of fraud. So what ended up happening is Letitia James ran on Getting Trump. And as she was running, she said that she would use every area of law to investigate the president and his business transaction, even his family. So this is kind of what a lot of people are upset about and why I get called about this. Like, Mike, is this even possible? Like, how can someone get sued for fraud when all the so-called victims say that they weren't defrauded? Well, because New York has its own definition of fraud law that was designed originally to go after people that were affecting small time type people. It wasn't intended for billion-dollar corporations and whatnot, but now it's being used that way. But anyways, here's the definition of fraud. Just really quick, let's watch this.
What is fraud under contract law?
Fraud doesn't normally involve a written agreement, although it can. Basically, what fraud is a tort. It's an intentional tort, wherein someone makes a promise or a statement to someone when they never intended to fulfill the promise, or that they knew the statement was false at the time that they made it. Or it could include a situation where someone has made a representation to you that was false. And because that representation was false and you were damaged as a result of a false representation, you can now sue that person for damages. One additional benefit of a fraud case to the plaintiff is that normally a fraud case arises to a clear and convincing evidence standard, which, if met, would often entitle the plaintiff to sue for punitive damages, not just for his compensatory damages.
Fraud requires damages and some kind of a victim. And here, all of the so-called victims said that they weren't defrauded, that they all made money. So the deal is that this isn't a crime, okay? A lot of people are saying, Trump was found guilty. No, this isn't a crime. This is a way for an attorney general to pursue a civil action, but unlike a civil action, the government gets a little extra bonus that they don't have to have a victim. They can claim that the state is a victim, and then the state presumably would get the money. So I don't even think that the victims themselves, the alleged victims, are going to get anything out of this. I think this just goes to help I'll support all the government employees and administrative agencies that they need to keep afloat over there in New York, I guess, because so many of the people that are job creators are fleeing in droves like they are in California. Basically, James claimed that Trump was giving banks inflated numbers, and that was the fraud. But the banks are claiming that they reduced those numbers anyways, and there wasn't fraud. But the judge went along with it. Now the judge is involved in some controversy where allegedly he's causing trouble with women over at Equinox and sending partial naked photos of himself to kids or to someone at his high school alumni. I'm not really quite sure on the facts, but I did another video on that. Really interesting how all this stuff is like, wow, these people are unbelievable. Everybody's saying no one lost money, but James is saying the bankers were harmed because they could have charged a higher interest rate. So that makes me wonder who's going to get the money. That is going to be the bankers. That'd be interesting. Like if she gives the money to the bankers, that could say something too. That could be construed in many ways. She's giving it to the bankers, so maybe they're victims, or maybe there's some kind of insider thing going on. We know she ran on getting them. You're not supposed to do that under the state bar rules, but as we know, the New York State Bar isn't going to do anything to stop her from doing this. I mean, New York is not pro-Trump in any way, shape, or form. Ever since he went red instead of supporting blue, they turned on him. So at least that's what a lot of people are saying. So the victim, she's saying it's going to be the banks. Well, a banker at Deutsche Bank testified that the bank adjusted Trump's net worth down to $2.6 billion from the $4.9 that he reported, adding that that's pretty normal and that no one was damaged. So what she's saying is, well, since he inflated it, that means that there's damages and there's victims, but the banks are saying, well, that's just normal business practices, and we downsized it, so there was no damages. So it sort of flies in the face of her saying that there were damages, and that could be an argument at trial, except for this law doesn't require damages. Again, this is a New York law. It's called Executive Law 63(12), and it's basically sort of this vague and ambiguous provision that gives her the power to pretty much be God and do anything. Historically, it was used to protect consumers and small businesses from scams and price gouging. It wasn't really intended to protect sophisticated billion-dollar bankers who already know the name of the game. But again, we can see that clearly she ran for the political purpose of getting Trump. And so she got Trump, and she got a great judge for her case. It was a trial by judge. There was no jury. And many people say that he was already found liable from the very beginning. The court and Letitia were able to use their numbers to devalue his properties, to say they were worth more than he thought they were worth, or his experts thought they were worth. So there may be some tribal issues of fact on appeal. Who knows? It's New York. They can pretty much do whatever they want in New York. It gives them broad authority. There's no victims needed. And in this case, there was no trial by jury. So what does this tell everybody? Who knows? From what I've read, in addition to all of this, laws like this have been upheld, even if there is no victim. So just because it's not traditional common law fraud doesn't mean that the legislature or the governor or the attorney general can't make up something and then get away with it over time and have it be accepted as normal. Now, from an equitable point of view, clearly it's unfair. It also has the potential appearance of impropriety, especially trying to determine where is this money going. I mean, I see these politicians getting into office broke and they're coming out multimillionaires. So it makes you wonder, it makes you think maybe we should take some power away from these people. But either way, it's obvious to most that this is being done to try and prevent Trump from running, or at least hurt him politically. And that's scary, because if some of these elements, these radical right-wing elements inside the Republican Party are able to get into power, they're going to do the same thing to you guys. And it's just going to be really bad. And I believe that's why in the past, this kind of stuff wasn't going on. This new generation of woke politicians is doing this stuff, and woke judges. And I believe that it's going to blow up in people's faces. And I'm hoping that cooler heads will prevail for everyone's sake, regardless of your political spectrum. Remember, the great Leviathan is the true enemy of freedom. And with that being said, make sure to like and subscribe. Make sure to save this video, and make sure to always follow me whenever you can, because you never know when the great Leviathan is going to take down this channel. Big Brother is always watching, and if you don't go along with the for-profit media narrative, don't expect to last long in this world. Thank you and have a nice day, and as always, Semper Fidelis. Hoorah.